Welcome to Pack It Like It's Hot, the official podcast from MJS Packaging, where we dive into real-world packaging insights with the people who know it best, our team, our partners, and other industry pros. Let's get started. And we're back with episode 3 of Pack It Like It's Hot. It's Cindy, and I'm here with Greg.
Good afternoon, Cindy.
Good afternoon. Today we are joined by a very wonderful coworker of ours, Edelen. He is one of our account executives here at MJS Packaging. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here.
All right.
Hi, Aaron. Good afternoon.
How are you, Greg?
Great.
So today we're going to spend some time talking about hot fill, something that's pretty near and dear to Aaron's heart. And Aaron, I'm just going to start you off by asking, how did you develop your expertise in this area?
So it's a great question, very random way, but I grew up in the food and beverage industry, and my family, I had always said I'm not going to follow in my dad's footsteps as everyone does, and ultimately graduated college and went into the food business. So started as a ship and receiving clerk in a food company, a co-manufacturer of acidified foods, went into plant management, production, ended up being the VP, president, and CEO of this company, and worked there for 18 years.
Wow, fantastic.
So whether that's expertise or just dumb luck, it is what it is.
That's great.
Excellent.
Tell us about the basics of hot fill for those unfamiliar with the process.
So there's two different ways to basically get longevity out of shelf life on your shelf stable products in the grocery stores. You've got a retort, which is a different side of the industry, and then you have hot fill. Hot fill is basically using a glass jar, a hot fill PET, hot fill polypro, that you can fill at a temperature that's required by the better process schools and what they recommend. And what you basically do is you're filling the product hot and then applying a cap to it. So that product is exposed from the time it gets into the jar till the cap is applied to the final product. But by doing that, you're using kettles or you're using heat exchangers, and you're bringing that product up. Let's say it's 185 degree mandate. You're bringing that product up to 185 degrees, killing everything that's in there, and then applying it into the packaging. So hot fill is based on your temperature, how long you hold it at that temperature, and then also what your pH is of the products.
Excellent. Okay. So if I was a manufacturer and I was thinking about filling my product through a hot fill process, what would I need to know in terms of expected costs for equipment, the advantages of doing it on my own, or should I hook up with a co-manufacturer? You kind of walk us through some of that.
So the difference between actually doing it yourself and going out to someone is going to be night and day difference. Are we talking, are you a smaller company just now getting into the industry? Are you a company that's been with someone else and you're thinking about going into the business yourself and manufacturing yourself, where you've had a co-man doing it for you? What I would say there is basically there's so many regulations nowadays. So it's not a cheap industry to get into. It's not going to be easy to get in and manufacture yourself, depending on how big you are at the time. Now, are there smaller companies now that you can get into and you can buy some kettles and some processing lines and get in for a decent price? Yes. But there's also, you're going to be competing against people that are running major jars down the line. So their speeds are ridiculously high. And there's sometimes where you're just going to have to weigh the ROI of, do you want to get into it yourself and look at this hot process filling? Or do you want to go to a co-man, because that co-man might be running fast enough and have better purchasing power than you do, that you might buy from a co-man cheaper than you can actually make it. So, you're looking at what are the advantages. Obviously, as you grow, if you had your own manufacturing plant, as you grow, you're going to take more home.
Sure.
Because definitely your buy-in power has increased. Your efficiencies have increased. And now all that money that you're getting back is no longer going to your co-man. You're gaining that money as your product increases. However, you are out a lot of money up front, a lot of equipment money, a lot of investment, and as well as,
Right.
labor, knowledge, knowing who to contact at your better process. And like I said earlier, having to take those classes, as well as staying up to date with, are you third party audited with SQF or, an AIB or Silica Labs, or, there's so many different things you have to keep up with. And there's so many regulations that keep going. It's a major investment, and not just an investment in your company, but an investment in your people that you have to make on your annual training to keep up with what's going on in the world.
Long-term play, in other words.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. In my opinion, for sure.
What types of products? I know, for example, Gatorade. That's a hot fill. I understand that in certain beverages, but what other beverages, what other foods, what other products would be suitable for hot fill?
So hot fill is mainly going to be your acidified foods. When I say that, now acidified foods is going to be, pickled veggies, salsas, some of the sauces that are out there. And then you also have foods such as the barbecue sauces, marinades. Those are all going to be a hot fill. Queso, shelf-stable queso is also can be hot filled, but a lot of it is retorted. The difference being, and what hot fill is, one of the purposes of hot fill and acidified style foods is, an acidified food has to be below a 4.6 pH. More than likely, your authority is going to request it be below 4.4. My recommendation is always 4.3 or below to stay underneath that guideline. And what that does is, the only way you can get from a 4.3 to a 4.2 or a 4.0 is if it's not naturally done. Tomatoes can obviously add acid if you're running a salsa, so it reduces the pH. You can produce a salsa without adding vinegar or adding some sort of a way to bring that pH down. But some people have to add, an acid or a vinegar or something else because their product's sitting at 4.4 and they want to package it at 4.2. You have to add something, which is vinegar or something like that. So the type of products, a lot of products can be hot filled. It's a matter of, does it taste good enough after you do it in a hot fill process?
So it's really a process, a formula. What
absolutely
the best way to get there at the right price and the right taste, and so on.
Absolutely. And there's certain products that, if I gave you a retorted product versus a hot fill product, you will taste that retort product because it is a higher pH. And you're going to be like, oh, wow, that doesn't have that bitterness to it. And so you would want to go the retort route. Or because a retort packaging or a retort co-man, there's not as many out there in this world, and there's more of the hot fill, you might accept the difference in the flavor because you get the better opportunity to go deal with, several co-mans instead of just the few minimal ones that are out there.
Wow, fascinating.
Is that something that's surprising to manufacturers when they're first starting out, that they might have to alter their formulation just so that it can be filled correctly?
100%.
Yeah, it seems like it would be.
Yeah.
Grandma's recipe has to change now.
Exactly. And that grandma's recipe or mom's recipe or anything, I mean, we all do it. We all fall in love with whatever the family is and what we've grown up on, and we know it our way. But understanding our way done in the kitchen, bought with a tomato off the shelf, bought with this, we can't mimic that in a manufacturing setting,
right?
Because we're buying bulk. We're buying if we're buying a canned tomato, it's either in a 55-gallon drum or a tote. And so we're pumping those in, or by the truckload. But those are all manufactured. Most of the tomatoes that are used in, let's say, a barbecue or a salsa within the U.S. are all manufactured most of them are manufactured out of California, and those are all packaged between July and October. So you're contracting and taking that up, but those products are completely, they're not different than what you're getting off the store shelves. But if you're using a certain fresh jalapeno, understand we're going to have to go to possibly a no heat jalapeno and add add some heat back into it so we can control the heat. And by doing a no heat, you can control the heat. Whereas a jalapeno might come out in July totally different than it comes out in November as far as heat. So you're making grandma's recipe. Things have to change.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense.
Talk about, if you could, any innovations that have maybe recently taken place within the hot fill that are changing the approach to shelf stability.
It's a loaded question.
I know.
Because obviously we've got, and I'm going to say this is an innovation that's taken place, but it hasn't taken place over the last, it's not something that happened over the last year. But obviously hot fill plastics are becoming something that is more and more viable and more looked at, as well as, just plastics that have the EVOH, the barriers on them to extend shelf lives. That are allowed to be hot filled to a degree. They don't handle as much heat as glass does, but if it's fit for your product, then it's fit for your product. Those are more of what I call the innovations. Mm-hmm. Hot fill process is a very 1950s, 60s, 70s. I mean, it's the old canning process, basically, just done with better equipment, right? I mean, we're still using kettles. Kettles have lids on them, and they're pumping into a filler. They're running through the capper. I mean, other than we're not hand capping or we're not hand filling like a mom and pop operation, we're still filling hot. We're still putting a metal lid on it. It is a very, per se, old school way of doing it, but it's just the innovations of the actual equipment are there to get better throughput or better efficiencies, or not touching the product as much, so you have less chance of cross contamination or anything like that.
Right.
So it's not necessarily a innovation of what is out there as far as technology, besides more, I would say, the packaging side of it.
Right. That's fascinating.
It is kind of a basic, if it ain't broke, right?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay. What role does the closure play in products that need to be hot filled, Aaron?
So definitely on shelf stable products, most closures, especially if you're using glass, you're going to be using a metal lid. That metal lid plays a very significant part of it, depending on whether it's a CT or a lug. CT is your continuous thread, which means you screw it on, screw it off, very similar to the old style canning operation. And then a lug, you snap on and snap off. Basically, it's a twist on, twist off, and it is. Those are specifically. You have to be specific if you are hot filling and talking to a company. You have to be specific. Tell them you're hot filling, you're not retorting. There's two different plastisols, one for retort and one for hot fill, and so you have to be very specific on that lid and on that closure that says, I am using a hot fill, because that plastisol has to hold up to whatever temperature you're doing. And so if it's going into a retort, it's sitting at a higher temperature longer. And if you used a hot fill, it would basically melt down the side of the jar and not give you a good seal. But that lid gives you your seal. That lid gives you your vacuum. Okay. So once that lid is applied, you're getting a vacuum. And whether you're getting a 12 on your vacuum or a 21 on your vacuum, the higher the vacuum, the better, but also be cautious that between your vacuum and your pull up, it's harder to get it off. So when you have a 82 millimeter lid, a larger lid, it is very, it's harder to torque off than it is a smaller lid for certain people.
Aaron, it sounds like you know a thing or two about this process.
I try, but it would be a thing or two, not much, not much more.
so tell us, Aaron, how can MJS help? If you want to get in, if somebody is listening and they want to get into the hot fill, how can Aaron Edelen, the Sultan of Salsa, help with this process?
So basically, how can we help is please call in. Call in, talk to anyone. They have my access, and I work with everyone within this team. I will be more than happy to jump on any call with anyone, any Zoom or any Teams meeting, and walk you through the process. Talk about what you're looking for, what you're doing, whether it's a facility that we can send you to, because we are partners with a lot of people out there throughout the U.S. and extended. And if we can point you in the right direction and help you, that's great. If you're looking at starting up your own plant and you want some suggestions, feel free to reach out. We're here for you. We would love to do business with you and talk to you about your business, as well as, just help you.
That's great.
And see what we can do to get you on to the next level.
That's great. That's great.
Thank you. Aaron, you're really one of the great examples of consultative excellence, which is one of the things that we really pride ourselves on here at MJS Packaging. So thank you for spending some time with us today, enlightening us in the world of hot fill. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
That's great, Aaron. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much.
It's my pleasure.
Be well.
My pleasure. Thank y'all.
Thanks for listening to our MJS podcast. Make sure to follow and listen on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Tune in next month when we will be joined by another packaging expert. And remember, packaging solutions are just a click away at mjspackaging.com.